everybody, to this week's episode of the Standing Room Only podcast. I am Goose. As always, I am here with Healy. This is episode number 28. I want to thank everybody for joining us again. If it's your first time, welcome. I just want to make sure that you guys are following us on our Apple podcasts, on Spotify. That's where you can pretty much find us. And then we have a YouTube channel as well. If you do want to watch a video feed, we are the Standing Room Only podcast. We are on social media as well. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter, the SR Only Pod. And then, of course, we have our own individual accounts if you want to follow us. We have myself. I am iGoose. 4 O's, don't ask why. And then we have Healy.
Yeah, you can follow me at the Healy6 on Twitter and Instagram.
Yes. So if also, I like to point it out, if you guys are gamers into video game content, do yourself a favor. Follow Healy. Again, the Healy6. He makes content. He has a YouTube channel. Check it out.
Appreciate it. This is a big episode.
Yeah, huge.
This is episode we're pretty much we're gonna dedicate it to The Last Dance. Everything Last Dance. The final 2 episodes got released or aired the other day, and it's all over. So we're gonna go over the last 2 episodes. We're gonna give our thoughts on the whole documentary in question, and maybe we'll have some discussion on what future documentaries should be made for athletes, like a Last Dance type one.
There's been some floating around. I don't know if you noticed by the sports accounts on social media, and there's a few that we can talk about. But yeah, we finished the last 2 episodes, episode 9, episode 10, the complete episode. I'm sad it's over. It was great. But let's recap. We had episode 9 was the 5th title for Jordan. Their second in a row of the second three-peat, right? And it was 1997 against the Utah Jazz. John Stockton and Karl Malone, the mailman. Great team out of the West. Karl Malone, I believe, was he MVP that year?
Yes.
Was that the year he was MVP?
Yeah, he was MVP.
So he was the MVP of the league. If you look at the numbers, Jordan put up better numbers, and Jordan, as always, made it a point. He made it personal. Great episode that led into obviously 10. What were your thoughts on episode 9 alone?
It was great. Another debunk in a conspiracy theory. That was the 97 finals was when Jordan had his flu game, and the whole thing got debunked about, was he out the night before gambling? Was he golfing 36 holes in the morning? No, he just got a little sick. The night before the game, every place was closed. He wanted some food, and the only place open was a pizza place. So his security guards ordered pizza, and the pizza place knew it was for Michael Jordan. So they sent 5 pizza delivery guys. That's sketchy right out the gate. I understand, because it's it's Michael Jordan. Let's go see him and just say what up, because he was a cultural icon. The most popular man on the planet at the time, from what it seemed.
Oh, yeah.
And they wanted to see him. And then Jordan ate the pizza by himself and ended up getting sick from it.
Got food poisoning. I read an article, I want to say last year. I don't know exactly when, but they the article was debunking the whole flu game, and did he actually have food poisoning, and the fact that they did target that in this episode. And Jordan himself even said, look, it was shady pizza that I ate. I was the only one. Basically said he had food poisoning. It wasn't really a flu. So the flu game for the past 22, 23 years isn't really the flu game. It's food poisoning. Nonetheless, was debunked, and Jordan went out and had a hell of a game. Nothing short of a great game. To the fact that Jerry Sloan was in disbelief that he was ever even sick.
Yeah. So if you guys don't know the impact of that game as well, Jordan was considering to not even play. Like, he was that ill, that sick from the food poisoning. And people were like, nah, dude, you just shouldn't do it, with how big of a game it actually was. That was a game 5. The series was 2-2. They could not, Jordan knew he could not afford a loss. Otherwise, you have to win the next 2 games and pull out a game 7 victory. 2-2 in the series. If it was 2-1, or if it was 3-1 in the series, maybe he sits out that game and plays the next one. But Jordan was like, nah, I'm gonna lace him up. And guys were saying, I forgot who it was, I think it was their center, Bill Wellington, but he was saying during timeouts, you could just see Jordan was like dead, and as soon as the whistles got blown, he would just look normal again.
Yeah, yeah, there was like a switch in his head that said, "Let's get to it." You know, it was kind of funny too because as you mentioned, he was about to not play, and they're in Utah. So if they lose,
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken, were the last 2 going to be in Chicago?
uh it was, yeah, the game 6 was in the United Center.
It was in the United Center. So I mean, who knows? Maybe they come back home, they win, but you never want to be down 3 games to 2 in any series. I don't care if you're Michael Jordan. Which Jordan would he have pulled it off? Probably.
Hmm.
But yeah, he ended up playing a great game. There was times where he had to lean on Pippen. He really showed his body showed a lot of fatigue. He looked sick. He looked like he was getting ready to throw up numerous times during timeouts. Sat away from the players because you just didn't know. And then he went in, and his whole idea was worst case scenario. I'll suit up and be a decoy.
Yeah.
So who knows if he was 100%, maybe he drops 81. Who knows?
Yeah. And at one point, I think it was to end the half, I don't think they were, yeah, the Jazz were, let the Jazz, oh yeah, the Jazz were up like 16 at one point. You got to
Early in the
remember,
game.
back in the day when these were being played, even like 10 years ago, finals games ended below 90 points a lot of the time. They
Yeah, I
aren't
noticed
in the
that too.
120s like they used to be. So a 16-point deficit, that is massive. So Jordan scored 17, cutting the lead down to like 4 to end the half. And then also, like, late in the game, Jordan hit a free throw to tie, and then he missed the second, and then the Bulls got the offensive rebound,
They got
and
the rebound.
Jordan nailed a 3 to win that game. And you got to remember, like, in that, Jordan didn't really shoot threes back in the day either. Like, no one really shot the 3 ball. Jordan especially didn't shoot the threes, and he drained a 3 to win the game pretty much for them.
Yeah, I mean, that solidifies Jordan, though. He hits him when he needs to, especially in playoffs and finals. But yeah, that was intense, and Pippen had a good series. That game was the fact that they were even down so much to start the game. I almost feel bad for Utah fans. It's almost like they're like, "Wow, Jordan's got the flu. We're up 16." And then they're like, "Oh shit, it's Michael Jordan. Michael
Hmm.
Jordan with the flu. He just got done beating the Monstars in Space Jam. He could beat anybody."
Yeah. And then, as we know, game 6, the Bulls closed it out. It was another close game.
Another close game, yeah.
And yeah, the Bulls, yeah, they closed out. Jordan scored 39 that game out of their 90 total points. In that flu game, though, he scored 38 of their 90 points. And that Utah Jazz team, after seeing what Karl Malone did to the Bulls in that first finals, oh my goodness, him and John Stockton, so underrated in NBA history. I don't feel like they get talked about enough, probably because they never won a championship. And it just came down to the Bulls. The Bulls beat them twice in a row, and
If it
did not
was
allow
not
them.
for Chicago, I do not see how the Utah Jazz do not win at least one of the 2 championships.
Hmm.
We can't forget Karl Malone. is an all-time great. This is a guy who is top 5, maybe top 10 in points scored.
Yeah, I think he's
He
number 2.
I mean, he's like he was
He's
great. He
he's
was the mailman. He was
yeah.
the you know, he and then you had John Stockton who was kind of like what we saw with Steve Nash later on. He would
Mhm.
score 15 points, 17 points, but then his dime dropping was second to none. And then, they had some other players, they had like Brian Russell, who was actually not a bad player. He can shoot the three ball. I know in one of the finals games, already know what you're thinking. In one of the finals games, he had a pretty good game. Brian Russell was a rookie. They tell a
Oh,
story
man. Yeah, from,
where,
when Jordan was retired at this point.
yeah, yeah. So Jordan's retired. He had just went to go play baseball, and Brian Russell got to meet up with him. I don't remember the exact scenario, but he basically called Jordan out. He's like, why did you have to retire? I was coming for you. He's
Yeah.
like basically telling Jordan he was gonna take him on the court.
Yeah, and
And
guard him.
Jordan, whatever, and guard him. And Jordan basically brushed it off. He's retired. He played baseball. But again, what Jordan was always good at with competition, the mentality, I'm going to remember that. And he got him back. And I mean, he couldn't stop Jordan to save his life. So the way Jordan told it, he laughs about it. I love when Jordan tells the stories and he laughs at these guys every single time.
No
And
remorse.
no remorse at all. He's like Brian Russell. He's like, yeah, he said he was gonna guard me. Why did I have to go play baseball? And he's like, well, I'm here. And I mean, he dominated. He dominated. Brian Russell, I mean, he wasn't a bad player either. So for Jordan to go out there and make it look easy, like he did in previous finals, I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, and as Jordan said, Brian Russell was at like pretty much the top of his hit list. Jordan had a hit list when it came to basketball. And I think in that first final series, there was 2 moments where Jordan got Brian Russell. I think the first one was in the flu game where he was able to get that 3-pointer. And then as we get on with the recap, we'll talk about the other moment for when Brian Russell gets punked by Jordan. So I also in that first episode, I think they cover the Eastern Conference Finals with the Pacers, and the Pacers almost beat the Bulls. They brought it to a game 7. That Pacers team was really good in that year. They had Reggie Miller. They had Jalen Rose. Who else
That
did they
was
have?
97 was actually Miami. It was 98 was the Pacers.
Yeah, in the episode, they covered the 98 Eastern Conference Finals.
The 98, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right. Okay. So we're moving ahead.
Yeah,
So, yes, Larry Bird's coaching, right? So you have Bird who played with Jordan,
that's
who
a
knows
weird
Jordan.
that's a weird thing to think about. It's just like now when Tyronn Lue or Luke Walton is coaching a team and LeBron's still playing, they were in the same draft class. I know Larry Bird was before Jordan a little bit, but it's just weird to see like an all-time great who played against Jordan coaching against Jordan now.
Yeah, there's players like even Jason Kidd went on to coach right away. I don't even think he was 40 yet when he started coaching, and he's coaching some guys that he was teammates with for a few years. So it's interesting to see. But that 1998 Eastern Conference Finals, Reggie Miller made a statement. He's like, "We had a better team than the Bulls, but the
Yeah.
difference is the Bulls had Jordan."
And they had that championship mentality. Oh, they
Oh
had
yeah,
Rick Smits, Mark Jackson, who's a great point guard, Antonio
yeah,
Davis,
Antonio
who
Davis, yeah,
he
was
was
young
pretty
at the
good.
time.
Solid team.
So they had a great team. Reggie Miller was I don't want to say he's an underrated player. There's it's one of those debatable situations with Reggie Miller because
Hmm.
he was a great 3-point marksman. He can score the ball. Was there much more to him? Not so much, but overall that team wasn't bad, and they gave the Bulls a run for their money in that series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reggie Miller averaged 17.4 points per game. The Pacers also had Chris Mullin. They also had our boy Fred Hoiberg on that team.
Fred Hoiberg,
But yeah,
who
Reggie
was
Miller,
a coach. Yeah.
yeah, coach for the Bulls. Reggie Miller, his averages per game, 17.4 points, 1.6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 0 blocks in 7 games. So he was just a scoring machine at that point.
Kind of like Ray Allen towards the end of his career with
Mm-hmm.
Miami and with the Celtics. Kind of just there as 3-point specialist, but um yeah, Jordan ended up taking over in that series as well, as he did pretty much in every single series. My favorite part at the end was when, I don't know if he had won the series or if he had just won one of the games, like game 5, and he went up to Larry Bird and he was and he shook his hand and what did he tell him? He's like,
I think that was after game 7.
was it okay, so they had just won the series.
Yeah.
And sportsmanship. I think that's the biggest thing we saw versus Jordan's early years with teams with the bad boys, Detroit Pistons walking off the court.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan got that respect later on. So he got it, and we'll talk about with Karl Malone and whatnot, but he got it from Larry Bird, who went up to him, who obviously was his friend. And I love how Jordan joked around with him. And Jordan was just like, fuck you bitch.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the funniest thing, because as serious as Jordan is on the court,
Mm-hmm.
they had like a brotherhood off the court. Like that's him and Larry Bird. I mean, they were on, the Olympic gold medal team,
Yeah, the
you
dream
know,
team.
the dream team, the original dream team. So, it's one of those things where, Bird tried everything he could to beat Jordan and the Bulls, and obviously he couldn't, but there was no love lost there. And that's what I kind of noticed too, throughout these last 2 episodes. But I think between that and Reggie Miller, the way Reggie Miller described Jordan as not even being human, it just, went to show that like Jordan, it didn't really matter. It didn't
Yeah.
matter. So they had the Eastern Conference Finals. Utah Jazz, again, they went back to back. They faced the Bulls in the NBA Finals, the 1998 NBA Finals. So
Yeah.
they're back to back, except they're the number 1 seed.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about how like Reggie Miller and Jordan were also like really good friends. And
Yeah.
also like it was cool to see after like one of the press conferences. It might have been like after game 5, maybe even game 6. They had an intense game. They're enemies, and Jordan and him are just having a chill conversation. It was like,
Yeah.
good job. We'll talk later.
Yeah,
And
they were just hanging out, and I mean that's good sportsmanship, and you can't let it go beyond that,
mhm.
beyond the court, because I mean that obviously it's like him and Isaiah Thomas now. He hates Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah,
They both respect each other as players, which you kind of have to do, especially when you're grown at that point. But that was kind of cool to see. Jordan just earned the respect. You can't hate Jordan for being good. That's you're a sore loser at that point.
and then after game 6, they had the press conference, and Jordan's like, "We're gonna win tomorrow, or we're gonna win the next game." And what they do, they came out, they pulled out the dub, and won game 7. But at that point, like, what else are you gonna say? What do you think about the next game? We're gonna win. Like, you have to believe in yourself as a player. It just looks badass, but like from a sense of like an athlete, you have to believe in yourself and just
You
say,
have Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You have to consider yourself the best person on the court at that time. I mean, Jordan, I don't think I've ever seen him doubt himself or his team,
no.
which I mean that was that killer mentality. And that's that kind of, we already talked about him in previous episodes, but that's kind of like Kobe came in around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And Kobe's Mamba mentality, if you compare his interviews compared to like Jordan, they're very similar. Jordan kind of started that whole mentality that I'll never give up, I'm not going to lose. He would never say he's better than anybody. He'll never say he's the GOAT,
Yeah.
but he'll let you know he's going out there and he's going to win the game. I mean, that's what it's
Mm-hmm.
about, right? The competition is
Yeah.
win or lose. And so I think that was key with Jordan and, setting, having that winning mentality. And as you mentioned, they went out, they won game 7. And at the end of it, he's just like, all right, we're off to Utah because Utah was the number 1 seed at that time.
Well, they were, yeah. They're the number 1 seed. Also, was it episode 9 or 10 where they covered Steve Kerr? I think it
Steve
was.
Kerr was episode 9.
Because he had a big shot in Game 6, I think.
He had the big shot, yeah, because Steve Kerr was the 97 finals hero. He wasn't the MVP, he was the hero.
Yeah, in Game 6.
And we're backtracking a little bit, but I think that was a very important episode,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously I did not know this about Steve Kerr,
No.
that his father had passed away. His father was teaching overseas in the Middle East, I believe. And, his dad was out teaching. He was at college away and he got a call saying, we got some bad news about your dad. And he basically, he ended up getting shot and killed, whatever. And, for Steve Kerr, I mean, for anybody, that's horrible news. Everybody reacts differently. And I feel like it's safe to say the average person, that's a lot. A lot of people might shut down from that. I know I probably would shut down from that. But Steve Kerr used that as fuel on the court.
Yeah, he went straight to
So
practice the next day, I think.
yeah, and that for him, I think basketball was his outlet,
Mm-hmm.
but with that being his outlet, it allowed him to grow as a player.
Yeah.
And when they won, and he mentioned that he never talked to Jordan about dads.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
like,
He didn't want to.
Jordan didn't seem like he wanted to talk, which I mean, that's kind of I don't want to say it's awkward. It's just one of those like, hey, your dad died too. Like, no, I don't want to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But, Jordan also at the same time, he even said was Jordan's a different breed. He's like finding time for Jordan when there isn't 10,000 media, a crowd of media around him. He's like, besides that, he's like, I see him in practice, but he's like, it just never came
Yeah.
up.
Just wasn't the right
And
time.
then, yeah. And so then it came out in game 6. It was game 6, I believe, right? He
Oh,
had gotten open. So
yeah.
we saw in the huddle,
Yeah.
they took a timeout and, Jordan even said Jordan was a genius. Jordan knew he's drawn the double team. It's the last shot, potentially last shot. Just be ready. And Kerr said, I'll be ready. That's it.
Because they were leaving him open for
They were
3.
leaving him open. Oh yeah. They kept leaving him open. They left him open for the 3, they left him open for the mid-range. And so Jordan's like, listen, this is it. Like, this is your job. This is my job, is to find you in the double. You're gonna be open. Just crunch it. And he did. He hit the 3. And after he hit the 3 and won the game, you
It was
just
a
see
free
him
throw
pump to the
shot.
crowd. Yeah. So I think that was a pretty good moment there. I
Yeah.
didn't know too much about Steve Kerr.
No, and it was cool how like his first couple years he's just okay, and he talked about, or I think it was Paxson was like, yeah, you come in the league and like I realized I was gonna be a role player, so I did my best to be like play that role correctly. And Steve Kerr was like, I looked up to Paxson, so he
To
went there.
Paxson.
He went there
Yeah.
for that year that Paxson. It was his final year there. They had a good bond, and then Kerr knew about Jordan and like what he wanted from his teammates, and he made sure he was mentally or like physically and mentally ready for the moments where he had to step up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he knew, yeah, with John Paxson, because I think John Paxson was at the final year when Kerr got there.
Yeah.
And so he kind of he knew that was the position he was going to be in, because Paxson had a game winner in the finals against the Suns.
Yep.
So it was just the irony that, he kind of took that torch of being the role player from Paxson, and he learned from him. He did. And of course he learned from Jordan, and, the expectation. It's not easy playing with Jordan. Jordan pointed it out. His teammates pointed it out. He's punching people in the face. He's cussing people out. But I mean, Jordan had, again, that goes down to a winning mentality. And
Mm-hmm.
Steve Kerr and all the other players accepted that. They accepted Jordan for who he was because they wanted to win with Jordan. And yeah, he hit a 3. And you said the free throw too.
Well,
Um, w-
it was at the free throw line where he nailed the jumper. It wasn't a
oh yeah, you're
three.
right.
It wasn't a
You're right.
three
He
that he
pulled
made.
up. You're right. I'm thinking of John Paxson's
Yeah,
finals.
his was a
Yeah.
three.
So yeah, he pulled up. It was a mid-range jumper. He was wide open. Jordan knew he was going to get double teamed. I think everybody knew except for Utah, or Utah probably knew too. Hey, let's leave Steve Kerr open because Jordan's the one who you would expect is going to get the ball in that situation. Just like, LeBron nowadays would get the last shot, which might be
Mm-hmm.
questionable. Certain
Kobe.
guys would get the last shot. Kobe, KD, guys like that.
Yep.
So you would expect Michael of all players to get the ball. And I think it was drawn up, and I think that was the biggest thing is he relied on his team.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan wasn't there to hit the game winner in a double team and to say, I'm the greatest. I hit a double team game winning shot.
Yeah.
His role was, how am I going to win the game? And that's what he did.
Yeah, he wasn't like Pippen
And
in that one game where Pippen sat out because he's like, I'm not getting the game winner. I'm not playing.
yeah, and it was that's a whole nother story. Pippen, I think Pippen realized after that moment too, because they won the game. The Bulls
Yeah.
won. Kukoc hit the shot, and I think that right there kind of just goes to show for any team, like you have all guys matter. The
Mm-hmm.
the five players on the court, anybody can do it. Um, if you don't rely on guys like J.R. Smith in the finals, who gets an offensive rebound and doesn't put the ball up because who knows why,
Yeah.
your team ends up losing. It's a
Yeah.
team sport. And I think, yeah, that the Bulls 97, 98 was 1997. That was the year that they won. Is that 72 and 10?
95, 96.
That was 95, 96. Okay. So that wasn't even their
No.
quote unquote greatest season, but they still came out and they ended up winning anyways. Um, and then so Steve Kerr, I think that's my favorite part about this documentary is how they targeted every player somehow and the coach somehow throughout the documentary through all 10 episodes until the 10th episode. They pretty much I know that there was it episode 9 or 10 where they targeted Gus Lett, his main right-hand man?
Um, I can't remember that.
Yeah, because there is an episode as well where so Gus Lett was Michael Jordan's security, like his main security guard.
They talked
He
about him
went
in
everywhere.
multiple episodes. Because
Yeah,
there's
yeah. This
the main one was when his dad died, and
his dad exactly.
I can't remember what in 9 or 10 when they went back to him, because then they
Yeah, they
had his
went. Yeah,
wife on there.
they had his wife because he ended up getting sick, and Jordan looked up to him as a dad, so we learned about
Oh,
that as
okay.
well. Yeah, so because when Jordan's dad died, Gus Lett was always with him. I mean, that's his like basically his security guard,
Mm-hmm.
and so they talk about that too, how Jordan looked up to him as a dad, and then when he got sick, he was like, "Hold on," he's like, "I want him with me on this finals run." I think it was '98. That was the last dance. So that was pretty cool too, how they target this person. I didn't know who Gus Lett was before this.
Yeah.
So he played that father figure for Jordan, and Jordan looked up to him. So it's kind of interesting to see how there's a bad side to Jordan, quote unquote, and then there's this good side to Jordan. The bad side is debatable. That just depends. People look at him
Mm-hmm.
as like, oh, he's a dick, but is he really? Not. I don't think so.
Yeah, it was
So
97. We'll move on to the 98 finals here in just a second. Was 97 or 98 the year where the Utah Jazz beat them both times in the year? I think it was 98. The
yeah, I'm
Jazz
pretty
had their
sure that was
number.
'98.
Okay, so yeah, we'll talk about that then. It's kind of like back when the Sonics beat them both times in the 72 and 10 year. Sonics had 2 of their 10 losses. But yeah.
Yeah, and because it was pretty interesting to see. Regular season and then the finals, it's just a completely different mode. But yeah, so Utah had the home court advantage in the 1998 finals. They had game 1 and game 2, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
Utah. Yep, they're the head honcho of the playoffs. And then yeah, like you said, First two games in Utah. The last three were in, or the next three were in Chicago, and then the final two were in Utah.
Yeah, because it was 6 games that the Bulls won in back-to-back years.
Mm-hmm.
So it all started off. Utah won game one. Karl Malone balled out in the whole series. In the whole
Yeah,
series, he balled out. I mean,
yeah.
game one, he had 33. I'm sorry, Jordan had 33 points, led both teams in scoring, but Karl Malone had like 14 rebounds. I think he might have even had almost 30
He had
points.
21, 21
He had okay,
points.
so he had 21
Yeah.
and 14 is a damn good game in a finals against Jordan. And as you mentioned before too, basketball was different back then. Everybody watching basketball now and everybody that's younger, even our age, we expect teams to drop over 100 points.
Like 120 in the
120
finals.
like more recently.
Mm-hmm.
But Bulls and Jazz, it was 85 to 88 in game 1. Game 2, the Bulls actually pulled ahead. Jordan had another great game. He had 37 points. They win by 5, 93 to 88. Then we get to game 3, which is the first game in Chicago. And let me tell you about that ass kicking. Utah, the road team, almost got outscored by double, almost double, a little bit less than double to the Chicago Bulls, 54 to 96. Jordan only put up 24 points in that game. That's the most points they put up in this finals, and Jordan only put up 24 points.
Yep.
It got to the point where I think everybody on the team scored.
Yeah, they all scored at least 2 points. They all had a bucket.
Even Bill Weddington, who never
Yeah.
really is there to score. So he went in and he ended up, they ended up taking that game. So they're up 2-1.
I think that was
And
the
then
lowest amount of points ever in a shot clock era game. I don't even know if now a team has scored 54 points, but at that time, no teams in the regular season or the playoffs has ever scored that low amount of points. And the Bulls held them to 54 in the finals. A dominant team in the finals.
yeah, that's a team where Karl Malone himself could put up 30 points. If we look at this, that is the lowest. 54, 56 is the second, which is teams people probably don't even know or remember. Minneapolis Lakers, Washington Capitals in 1948, 1949.
Was that even with the
Uh,
shot clock era? I
I
don't
don't
even
even
know
know if
when.
that was the shot. I don't even think that is. I don't even think that's shot clock era. If we look more recently, it's not there. I don't even have it on this list. There's the Pistons put up
1954.
The Lakers put up 68 points against the Pistons in 03-04. Celtics put up 67 points in 2009, 2010. So in the 2010 finals against the Lakers, they put up 67 points. Lakers only scored 89. So even then, in the 2000s era, 88, 90 points, teams scored and won basketball games. Besides that, not too many teams scored less than 80. There's a lot more in the 70s, but either way, that just goes to show how dominant that Bulls team is, that defense.
Yeah, stepping up.
A lot of people, look at Jordan and Pippen, and there's always offensive stats, and I think that's how it is for even like nowadays all-star votes. People look at points per game. They look at three-point shooting. They look at free throws. They look at offensive stats. But I think one of the most important factors is defense, and it always has been. Not too
Hmm.
many teams, not too many players get credit for it, but Jordan was one of those guys who won Defensive Player of the Year awards.
Yeah,
Um, he had a couple steals a game, almost 3 steals a game for multiple seasons.
yeah,
Um, and it even trickled down to our era, our more recent era with basketball. You have the Spurs, who were a really good dynasty for a while, who, yeah, sure, they had Tim Duncan, who was great, but none of that would have happened, at least more super recently. For instance, when they beat the Heat, little
yeah.
Ron in the Heat, Kawhi Leonard, His
Yeah.
defense was incredible, incredible. And I think when you have a good defense that goes with a solid offense, you'll always have
Mm-hmm.
the advantage, but I never expected to see a 54 to 90
No.
whatever point loss. So that was pretty interesting to see. And they kicked it up, from that point. And then towards the end of the series,
Yeah.
Utah ended up
Mm-hmm.
winning again. Karl Malone had a huge game.
Karl Malone had 22 points in that 54-point game. He was 8 of 11. So, like,
Yeah.
he was negative 21 on the court, though. Thing about Karl Malone that we didn't touch up on, the arguably the best power forward of all time. You could have your other picks with, like, Dirk or Tim Duncan nowadays, but he's up there. He's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. This dude was massive. He was 6'9" back in the day, which was pretty tall for the NBA. He weighed 250 pounds. But the Bulls, they had Tony Kukoc, they had Dennis Rodman. Those guys are Kukoc was 6'10", but he wasn't nearly the weight that Malone was. You had Dennis Rodman, who was 6'7", trying to guard him. The Bulls did not really have a guy that could guard Malone well in the finals. They did have Wennington, who was 7 feet, but just in general, for like basketball sense, he was just okay in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. He was just there. He was a body. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
then I thought it was pretty interesting. One of my favorite parts was after game 3, everybody is tuning into WCW
Oh yeah.
wrestling. And
Yep.
Hulk Hogan and the NWO, right? They're sitting there, and during this time, wrestling was huge. This was
Yeah.
huge. You had 2 companies. You had WWF. You had WCW. You had these 2 huge companies battling each other for ratings, and somehow, one way or another, Dennis Rodman was convinced to skip practice
For
to
the NBA
go
Finals.
to the NBA Finals to go join the show, the WCW episode, which is live, and he's sitting there hitting people with steel chairs and he's spray painting, and people are watching. They're like, "Wait, this dude is doing it all." But really, deep down, everybody in the Bulls organization, what is he doing? What
Yeah,
is he
why is he
doing?
out there? And
I
it
thought it was hilarious.
created a huge
I thought
distraction, but it was funny. That's what Dennis needed, though, as they mentioned in the episode. Dennis is the type of dude where you let him do his own thing,
just
because
let him do his own thing.
if he's in his own mindset and he gets to do what he wants, when he gets on the court, he brings 110% of his energy.
Always. He's always diving for rebounds, diving out of bounds. And I mean, it is what it is. They ended up winning the series, but I thought it was hilarious how I think Phil Jackson handled Rodman the best. He handled the
Yes.
media because
Yes.
the media is chewing you up. Some coaches would not even cover that player. They'd be like, "Yeah, we don't know what he's doing," or
Or they
whatever.
would succumb to the pressure and be like, okay, you aren't starting. You aren't going to play. It doesn't matter that this is an NBA Finals game. You broke the rules. You need to do this. It's like, nah, just he let him
We're gonna
play
ignore
and
it.
act. Yeah, they
Exactly.
ignored it.
And I thought it was huge for Phil to say, they're like, "So, what do you think about this distraction to the team?" Or, what I forgot how they asked it, but he basically was like, "No, it's you guys that have your minds on this." He's like, "We're focused on the finals," basically.
Hmm.
So he never once had anything negative to say about it. Never put Rodman down for it. I'm sure behind closed doors, he was like, "What?" Like, "Hey." And then, it's funny because they even had to have Rodman snuck him out of the
Yeah,
stadium.
because
It wasn't even they weren't yeah,
media was
they
just
weren't there for
waiting
Jordan.
outside the locker room, and as soon as he stepped out, someone noticed, and you just see these guys running with like huge cameras on their shoulders trying to get some footage of him.
And he's just jogging out in his
Pajama pants or
civilian. Yeah,
whatever.
his PJs. He was in practice. The next time he was in practice, he was in the back of the team, and you can see him in his PJs. This I don't know if that was always a thing after he did something stupid, he wore PJs, or if he just wore PJs all the time.
Yeah.
But it reminds me when they had to pull him from Vegas, he was in practice that day with his PJs on. So
Mhm.
Rodman was a character, and obviously we learned throughout the 90s and then beyond, he wasn't he's not your average human.
No.
There's something there where he just is he's extraordinary. Let's put it at that. Not too many people try to marry themselves, right?
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting. I thought that was hilarious that he did that. So it's like it's the perfect story. This is the perfect story. It's the final, it's the last dance. And he's just like, and Carl Malone didn't even talk about it, ended up going on the show as well after the finals. So they were
Yeah.
on there for a little bit and they had, I'm sure they made their money off of it, and
Mhm.
that's what historically these, wrestling companies did. They would get like Mike Tyson and, they even had Donald Trump back in the day.
Yep.
So that was pretty interesting to see. And, I watched it in the 90s and I remember that, but I didn't understand like me watching, obviously I'm in my mid 20s. I don't want to say late, but I was around, right? I remember watching the finals, but not really knowing basketball. I didn't
Yeah.
understand it. I didn't understand the Michael Jordan phenomenon. I remember McDonald's selling, um, large Cokes, like their cups with
Yeah.
Dennis Rodman on it, and you can rub the ice on his hair and it would change the colors, which
That
was
is
awesome.
sick.
That was awesome to me. I was a kid and I was like, "Look at this," and there was just so much cool things that I remember, but I never understood what this meant, this Bulls team, what it meant
Mhm.
not only to the city, but I mean, to everybody in the world, to everybody. It was a cultural change and it made basketball what it was. Um, so then we can proceed, right? So that was
Yeah.
game 3 to game 4. Game
Yeah.
4 comes up. We are in Chicago and they pulled away. They got another victory. It was close though. It was a
Mhm.
4-point victory. It was 82 to 86. Jordan, he's feeling confident, but he's like, basically, Utah is playing well. Karl Malone is playing well. You see him in the paint. They're not really stopping Malone. But when it's only Malone, what can you do? Right. And so
Yeah.
then at that point, there's game 5, the third game in Chicago. Karl Malone went off again.
Oh, yeah.
When I say one off, he put up 39 points. There was no stopping him. There was no stopping him. So now you're looking at the series and you're like, okay, it's 2-3. Utah's going back to Utah.
Yeah.
Granted, they're down in the series, but after a game Karl Malone just had, and
Mhm.
Karl Malone's exposing the Bulls. They
Yeah.
can't stop him.
Yeah.
And even Jordan said it. Malone was just having a hell of a series. And so they go back to Utah, game 6.
Mhm.
Something about the Bulls in game 6s.
They never wanted to play game 7.
Never wanted to play a game, and they even said they did not wanna play a game 7. They went to Utah. They went and that the Utah fan base was I mean, I was pretty impressed. I didn't know
Yeah.
Utah really cared about their team like that.
No, you don't
'Cause,
see
I
that
mean,
now, or like
you
they aren't known for that now.
yeah, they're not really that known, and I mean, it's not like they've had a bad friend. They've always had a decent franchise. I mean,
Yeah.
they've had some good players, especially more
Mhm.
recently too. But I've never seen Utah fans show out like that. So for me to see that, I was just like, wow, like, and I already knew the Bulls won in game 6. Obviously, I
Mhm.
think a lot of people knew what to expect, especially with 20 minutes left in the episode. And so then they go there and it's a close game and they're winding down.
Mhm.
Karl Malone has the ball. Is it
Well,
I'm trying to think,
The
is this
Bulls are down at this point. They're
Bulls
down
are down
they're down by like 4 points or something.
and
And
Pippen's hurt.
yeah, Pippen, this is the game Pippen is like done. Pippen
excruciating
played
pain.
25 minutes. He put up only 8 points. He could barely move.
They
So,
would go I love how they would give him medicinal treatment just to get 5 minutes of him,
yeah.
and he looked so stiff running. I was in pain. I was sitting there watching that episode with my girlfriend, and I convinced her to watch the last 2 episodes. She didn't really watch all of it with me,
Hmm.
but she watched these last 2 episodes, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, like, look at him run. He looks stiff." I'm like, I know. He's having
Yeah.
lower back pain." Like, they literally had to pull him,
Yeah. He was losing
and
feeling and function in his like legs and
y
stuff.
yeah, and I mean, for those of us who know Pippen, Pippen was, I would say, on the grittier side.
Yeah.
Like, granted, he was a great offensive player, but defensively, he was great too.
Hmm.
And he did what he could. I think there was a point where did he get an offensive rebound or he got a steal off of a rebound? And you're just like, man, we don't need any more from you, Pippen. Like,
Yeah.
that was more than enough. That was
Hmm.
more than enough. So Utah's winning toward
Yeah.
down the stretch.
It's not
Utah fans
looking
are
good for
ready
the
for game
Bulls.
7. Oh, not at all. Not at all. Pippen's not playing. Jordan is doing what he can, but they said, fatigue might be setting in. He's a little bit older now at this point.
Hmm. Yeah.
Karl
And
Malone,
with a minute to go, Jordan ties up the game with 2 free throws. And then the next possession, John Stockton hits a three. At that
yep,
point, you're just like, you're down 3. This doesn't look good. Jordan, this is probably one of the greatest minute and 30, 1 minute, 30 seconds of basketball there ever is. So Jordan misses a 2-point shot with a minute 30. They're down 2, and then eventually Stockton misses a 3. Jordan gets the ball back, and then he gets 2 free throws because he's fouled by Stockton. And then Stockton hits the 3, 41 seconds to go. Then Steve Kerr enters the game. Jordan gets a layup. And this is the crucial play of the game. The Bulls are down 1. The Jazz go down the floor. They're running their plays. And as Jordan says in the documentary, he's like, they've ran this play multiple times. I knew Malone was going to get the ball. So basically, Malone sets a screen for a guy coming across, and the person trailing follows the guy because you don't want that guy to be wide open for a shot or whatever. So
yeah,
Jordan goes by Malone, and then he stops. He turns around, Malone gets the ball, and then Jordan steals it. He gets
steals
it
it.
wasn't really a clean steal as well. Like, he hit it, he got it out, but he had to like fight to get the ball.
That was risky
Yeah.
because that player was left open, but Jordan knew he's going to have enough time on the weak side, the blind side, whatever you want to call it, to reach his hand in.
Yeah. And for no one
Got
to
it
like
enough.
recognize that he's there too. Like, if he had to time it perfectly to where the person passing it in, like, didn't know that Jordan was going to stop and steal the ball.
Yeah, because they could have called it out. They could have said behind you. They could have said weak side, whatever they wanted to say. And even then, Malone almost didn't get it stolen. Jordan
Mhm.
almost didn't get it. And that player is wide open. So that's the first part of that play, that
Yeah.
transition.
And then the Bulls don't have a timeout, or they do have
No
a
time.
timeout. They do have a timeout.
Oh, they do, but Phil didn't want to take
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It feels like, all right, we're going to let him go. Cause if you call a timeout, you get people set. Everyone's able to think. At this point in the game, it's like, oh crap. Oh crap. What do we do? What happens here? And you just go down the court. Feels like Jordan has this. And we get to one of the most like famous plays in NBA history, one of the most famous photos in NBA history. Jordan on the left side of the court goes towards the middle to drive. He crosses up Russell and pulls up for a mid-range jumper. Nails it with 5 seconds to go. Puts the Bulls up 1. ends up being the game decider. And that photograph they showed with all the people in disbelief, the Utah fans knew that ball was in the air and that ball was going in.
Everybody had their hands on their head in disbelief that Jordan got the shot off. I mean, the crossover was nice, and I love how Jordan made it a point to say, watch the film. It's not a push off. His body is already going that way.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you watch it at a certain angle, it does look like he pushes off. He creates space. But when you watch it at the right angle,
Yeah.
his whole momentum is going in that little corner of the elbow or whatever you want to call
Mm-hmm.
it. And Jordan just nice, simple crossover. He releases it. They show the crowd. They
Yeah.
show the photos. The fan holding the number 6, the Bulls fan holding
Yes.
the number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's a photo I would love to have. Just like
That
behind me.
that photo, I read a book on Michael Jordan back in like 6th or 5th grade, which is maybe 04, 05. So this is only 7 years after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I'm like, wow, this guy did this. Michael Jordan actually did this. And they have a big photo. It takes up 2 pages of him hitting that shot. And it's black and white besides him and his jersey. And you just see the expression by the Jazz fans. The ball's not even in. The ball is not even halfway to the hoop. And they know. They know it's
Mm-hmm.
going in. And I think that was the most iconic shot I've ever seen. One of the most iconic shots. There's been some other iconic shots, but that is
Yeah.
probably seals the deal right there and solidifies Jordan as the GOAT, wins his 6th title.
Yeah.
And
Never made a game 7 in the NBA finals. All of them
I
ended
think
6 games or less.
that's what, separates him from anybody else in the GOAT talks, right? 6 for 6, left, came back, team dominated,
2 three-peats.
2 three-peats. Some guys couldn't even do a three-peat.
Yeah.
There's another team that we're going to talk about, but he ends up winning. They end up talking about, you know, coming back. Jerry Reinsdorf calls Phil right after the finals and is like, I didn't know this. I don't know
No.
if anybody knew this.
Jordan
Jordan
didn't
didn't
even
know
know
this.
it.
Jordan, that's oh man, that's why I love this documentary. Jordan didn't even know this, and they give him the tablet, and they're like, "Watch this." So Phil's explaining, you know, Jerry called me and said, "Let's
Jerry
do one more."
Jerry's talking about
Or Jerry's talking about it. Yeah,
yeah.
Jerry's talking about it. And Jerry called Phil and he said, "Hey, I called Phil and said let's get the band back together." And he even said he knew it'd be a mission to try to get Pippen back because Pippen was having so many disputes. He was unhappy with his money. They could have worked something
Yeah.
out.
Him,
And
Rodman, and Kerr were all free agents.
yeah, and Phil basically was like, "Yeah, it's a game changer. At the beginning of the year, we had our mindset, this is the last dance. This is how we're gonna go out."
Mm-hmm.
Especially with everybody being a free agent and convinced it's done.
And Jerry
And
Krause.
Jerry Krause too does not help the situation. And so Jordan seeing that, and they asked him, how do you feel? How did it feel that you weren't able to go for 7? And he said he was angry.
Yeah, he's like, what? We could have won 7. We could have
He
won
had
that next year.
nothing but confidence. They would have
Yeah.
faced the Spurs, maybe. And I think they would have matched up extremely well with that Spurs team,
Yeah.
And you can feel it when Jordan said, when he reacted, I mean, I don't know about you, but I felt it in my core, like, oh shit, like he had no idea this whole
Yeah.
time. This whole time.
And
And at that
he
point, I was gonna say, at that point, it's not even about money. At that point, sure, Pippen, give him his money. At that point, it's not even about the money. It's to go out and to make a statement that you guys they could have easily been in the finals, and Jordan
Yeah.
knew that. And the fact that I don't know if my opinion changed on Phil at all for not trying to get the band back together, because obviously Phil was very, very, very successful with
Mhm.
LA.
Yeah.
But I think seeing Michael react the way he did kinda I felt angry with him.
Yeah, and
Not that's not as a Bulls fan, you know?
yeah, and Michael Jordan, he even said, like, he was talking about how good he was throughout his career. He pretty much retired at the peak. He was only at that time, he was 34. So he still had a few years left. And he talked about it. He was like, I felt like this was my best year. I was at my best, not because of his physical ability, but because of his technique and his
His
mental game
mental.
and his
Yep.
form and everything. He thought he was at his best at that point.
Yeah, and I think for him and every other guy on the team, that mental game was huge, and Phil being the leader was huge. I mean, at that point, I don't blame Phil.
Hmm.
You know, looking back on it, it's like they had a great run. Would they have won another one? Sure. But I think even with Phil too, because with Phil, everything's a mental game with Phil.
Yeah.
You know, he's like a Zen Buddhist, basically. Like he was convinced and he was content. He was happy. He's like,
Yeah.
"We're done. We won. We're done."
Yeah. I
And
won
I think
six.
it's
I need a
okay.
break.
Yeah. He had a break. I think he took did he even take the next year off?
Yeah. He took a little break and then he went to the Lakers like a year after that.
Oh man, what a success story. That's a whole nother success story right there. But
Hmm.
that basically was the finale of The Last Dance. We saw the finish and I don't know what like what's your takeaway? How do you feel about it?
About who? All right.
About the Last Dance, the finale, just as a whole, the
Oh man.
documentary itself, your takeaway.
So after it was all over, I watched it while in bed and I just laid there. Like, did I really like it was amazing what I watched. What I spent 10 hours watching the past 5 weeks, the storylines that went into it, the way that they told everything throughout that documentary. It was amazing. I am so glad that they made this documentary. I don't think another documentary this documentary right here might ruin how I view documentaries in the future. Because it was so good that every documentary I see from here on out will probably be like, I'll compare it to The Last Dance. And it just won't come close and I'll be like, it's just okay. Maybe
That
not, but
Jordan's The Last Dance was the GOAT with Jordan, right?
mhm,
I personally believe so for me, I thought it was excellent. It
yeah,
was perfectly executed. The way they transitioned to previous years, from his early career, his endorsements to off the court, the other players, how they, you know, kind of targeted them early in their careers, how they formed as a unit, as a
yeah,
dynasty. Everything that went into it was great. I feel the same way. If they have another documentary, which I would not be surprised if there is a vault for holding other players' footage, such as Kobe. Kobe coming into the league was the next Michael Jordan.
yeah.
You know, that was one thing they said. I think personally, I don't know about you, if there is another documentary,
It
I
has
would
to be
love for
Kobe.
it has to be the Lakers three-peat. That Lakers three-peat, that was the Lake Show. You had Shaq, you had Kobe, you had I think Derek Fisher was there. Then they had Robert Horry at the time,
Yeah,
or was Horry with San Antonio? He ended up going to San Antonio.
yeah,
So, all led by Phil Jackson,
yep,
who is clearly a mastermind of a coach, mastered the triangle offense, took a couple talented players, filled in some role players, and they excelled. They dominated.
yeah. The
I
triangle.
that's what I yeah, that's what I would look forward to watching. We'll see. there's probably a lot of time. This documentary didn't come out for 20 years after The Last Dance, 22 years to be exact.
Yeah, and I think they didn't say, or they didn't start filming this, I think, until after a couple years ago, like 2016. They got like all the film, and they got all the interviews then. So if there
Yeah,
is
it was
another one,
after.
we'll have to see.
Yeah, I like how Jordan did it. If I'm not mistaken, the same day the Cavs had their championship parade, LeBron was hoisting that trophy in Cleveland, and James or Jordan just had to pull the trigger that day.
Yeah,
LeBron, I think, is another
mhm.
subject to target. We'll talk about LeBron. I don't know if you were on Facebook. I trolled everybody that I have on Facebook with my comments
Mhm.
about the documentary, and I don't know. I feel how I feel, and I feel that everybody loves to hate LeBron. And I mean, I'm a LeBron fan. Do I think Jordan is the best ever? Sure. But this is a whole nother debate that
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about right now, but LeBron, Kobe, um, those two players, I would love to watch a documentary on as far as throughout the league and, secret footage dissecting the brain behind off the court, you know what I'm saying? Especially Kobe.
Yeah.
Kobe Young, when did he start maturing? When did he have that Mamba mentality?
The
You know what I'm
unfortunate
saying?
yeah, the unfortunate thing about that is, like, unless they already started filming for Kobe, we'll never get the insight like we did with Jordan. We'll only
Yeah.
get, like, the thoughts from other people.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that was huge with this documentary with The Last Dance is Jordan's reaction to everything. Jordan's reaction to Gary Payton, Jordan's reaction to Russell, Jordan just laughing all the time about these guys, and
Mhm.
we'll see if they don't make it about Kobe and make it more so about the three-peat of the Lakers because Shaq led that team.
Yeah.
Kobe was great in the finals, but Shaq, like the numbers he put up was nuts,
He was
nuts.
unguardable
Unguardable. I mean, the dude is 2, moving around like a small forward, like, it was,
with weight on him too.
with weight, yeah, he was unstoppable, and, of course, Kobe too. They both needed each other for that. So that's what I would hope to look forward to, and I don't know, I was speechless by this documentary to the point where I had to start watching Derrick Rose highlights. I had to feel a heartbreak. I was like, Chicago is the most unluckiest city until recently, now that we're finally making moves. We have a
Yeah.
new GM, we have some new front office guys. We haven't really experienced a Jordan since then. And I know deep down, Chicago Bulls fans will
Man.
probably sit in there like, God damn it, Jerry Krause.
I just want one superstar to play for the Bulls again. That would be amazing. Anthony Davis, please.
Hey, we have some guys that, leading the organization now who may have some pull in free agency. Because I can tell you,
Yeah.
Foreman and Paxson did not. Foreman and
No.
Paxson couldn't even pull the trigger on LeBron and Wade
Yeah.
when
And
they
they were
wanted to come to Chicago.
yeah, they were right there.
So I think we can target that next week. Let's talk about um, let's talk about that. Chicago sports or maybe just athletes, and I'm gonna put a poll out. I don't know what it's gonna be exactly yet. There's a few things on my mind. So for everybody listening, watch out for our Twitter, for our Instagram. We're gonna put a poll out. Um, don't know exactly what it's gonna be yet. I have one of three, but be on the lookout for that. I want to hear everybody's feedback. I want to hear everybody's feedback as far as this episode. What was your thoughts on The Last Dance? What is your thoughts? Is Jordan the greatest?
Mhm.
I'm sure 99.9% of the world can agree he is. So, again, for those who don't think he's the greatest, I wanna hear why. I always like that debate as well.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, until next week, again, we are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, we are the Standing Room Only podcast, we are on YouTube. And again, you can follow our social media. We're SR Only Pod, and then our own personal accounts. Instagram for myself, I Goose 4 O's, and then Healy.
Yeah, you can follow me at the Healy 6. on Twitter and Instagram.
All right, till next week, guys.
See you later.